Peter never liked being the odd one out, but tagging along with Brian and Samantha was better than another night alone in his room, staring at the walls. The couple had been dating for a year, and though they never said it, Peter knew they invited him to things like the county fair out of pity. He hated being the third wheel, but he hated the silence of his empty house more. It didn't take much to convince him to join them for the fair in the neighboring town. A sprawling mess of lights, noise, and the smell of fried food. The main tent loomed in the center, surrounded by creaky rides and vendors hawking games and snacks. The three of them piled into a rickety cart that mimicked a roller coaster, the kind that jolted your spine and left you dizzy. 10 minutes later, they stumbled out, laughing, though Peter's smile was forced. He wasn't in the mood for fun, not with his senior essay looming like a guillotine. Samantha suggested funnel cakes at a nearby vendor, her arm looped through Brian's as they trailed behind Peter. The couple shared a single cake, their fingers brushing as they tore off sugary pieces, while Peter walked ahead, hands in his pockets, feeling like a spare part. "So, what are you doing for your senior essay, Peter?" Samantha asked, her voice light but prodding. Peter sighed. His essay was a disaster, or rather, the lack of one was. Everyone else in their class had finished, but he couldn't even pick a topic. If he didn't turn in something brilliant, his grades would tank and community college would be a pipe dream, let alone a four-year school. "I still have no idea," he admitted, kicking a pebble. "But I need something fast." Brian chuckled, his tone teasing but not cruel. "Yeah, but you've got like 2 weeks, or you'll be flipping burgers forever." Peter rolled his eyes, though he knew Brian was right. Brian's rich parents could buy his way into any university, and Samantha was already set with early acceptance to Columbia. Peter, meanwhile, was just trying to graduate high school. As they walked, Peter's eyes caught on a brightly colored tent tucked between a popcorn stand and a ring toss game. A sign outside read, "Madame Cone, the Mystic," the letters painted in garish red. Samantha slapped his shoulder, grinning. "There's your answer, Peter. Maybe she'll give you the topic you're looking for." Peter scoffed. He didn't believe in fortune tellers or any of that mystical nonsense, but before he could protest, Brian and Samantha pushed him toward the tent, laughing. The cloth door parted, revealing a dim, carpet-strewn space that smelled of incense and old fabric. Oversized throw pillows circled a low table, a cliché crystal ball sitting at its center. Peter hesitated, but his friends were already inside, calling out, "Hello." A faint tinkling answered, like tiny bells, and a figure emerged from a back curtain, carrying a saucer with a teacup that rattled with each shaky step. Madame Cone was old, her graying hair matted, her face weathered from years on the road. Her foggy eyes seemed to look through them, and her purple velvet dress hung loosely on her frail frame. "Welcome," she said, her raspy voice gentle but eager, motioning for them to sit. Peter sat reluctantly on a pillow beside Brian, feeling ridiculous. Madame Cone lowered herself across from them, her movements slow, and asked, "Which one of you seeks answers?" Before Peter could speak, Brian and Samantha pointed at him. "Of course," she said, a smile creasing her face. "I sense turmoil in you, young man. You have questions, and I can help." She sipped her tea, then set it down, reaching for Peter's hand. He gave it hesitantly, and she turned his palm up, tracing the lines with a bony finger. "See this divergence?" she said, stopping at a point in the center. Peter nodded, skeptical. "It means you face a choice, one that will lead to two very different futures." He tried not to roll his eyes. Everyone faced choices, big deal, but she frowned, her voice growing colder. "You must choose within a week, but I see you picking the wrong path." Peter's skepticism wavered. What did she know? She chuckled, as if hearing his thoughts. "I know more than you think, boy. I can guide you to the right choice." She slid a slip of paper across the table. "Follow these instructions exactly, alone, and you'll find your answers. Fail, and your life is forfeit." The light seemed to dim as she spoke, her words heavy with warning. Peter took the paper, but she stopped him from unfolding it. "Not here. Not now. Alone." Samantha asked about payment, but Madame Cone waved her off. "A debt was made, a debt is paid. Just follow the instructions, Peter." That night, Peter sat cross-legged in his attic, a place he hadn't visited since he was a kid. It was dusty, cluttered with old boxes, and carried a faint dread from childhood games gone wrong. Moonlight filtered through a sepia-tinted window, casting shadows on the wooden floor. The slip of paper from Madame Cone lay in his lap, its instructions precise. Draw a sigil, light 6 candles, recite a prayer before a mirror. He'd chosen the attic for its isolation, its eerie quiet fitting the ritual's demands. With chalk, he drew the sigil, a circle enclosing 2 inverted triangles forming an X, connected by wavy lines, with a bisecting line forming crosses and an isosceles triangle below, each end capped with a circle. He double-checked every line, every curve, unwilling to risk a mistake. 6 yellow candles flickered around the circle, their light dancing across a full-length mirror propped against a trunk. Peter took a deep breath, unfolded the paper, and read the prayer aloud, his voice trembling. Lord Satan, by your grace grant me, I pray thee, the power to conceive in my mind and to execute that which I desire to do, the end which I would attain by thy help, O mighty Satan, the one true God, who livest and reignest forever and ever. I entreat thee to inspire Az to manifest before me, that he may give me true and faithful answer, so that I may accomplish my desired end, provided that it is proper to his office. This I respectfully and humbly ask in your name, Lord Satan, may deem worthy, Father. The words felt wrong, heavy, like they didn't belong in his mouth. Doubt crept in as he stared into the mirror, seeing only his pale, nervous reflection. Minutes passed, and nothing happened. His chest tightened, his heartbeat loud in the silence. This is stupid, he muttered, blowing out the candles. He left the attic, chalk and paper abandoned, convinced he'd been played by a carnival con artist. The next day at school, Brian's loud bang on a locker made Peter jump, earning a laugh from his friend. Samantha elbowed Brian, then asked, "So, what happened with the fortune teller stuff?" Peter shrugged, shoving his backpack into his locker. "Nothing. She was just messing with me. Some dumb summoning spell, like in those urban legends. Candles, mirrors, chanting. Total waste of time." Brian burst out laughing. "You actually did it? Sat in the dark talking to a mirror?" Peter slammed his locker shut, annoyed. "Yeah, well, it was your idea to go in there. I should have known better." Samantha frowned, but Brian kept teasing. "Come on, man, that stuff's just to scare kids." Peter walked away, ignoring their laughter, determined to figure out his essay the hard way. All day, Peter jotted down ideas, but nothing stuck. By the final bell, he'd drawn a detailed leopard in his notebook for no reason he could explain, folding it into his pocket as he boarded the bus. On the ride home, he reread Madame Cone's instructions. Complete darkness, 6 amber or blue candles, a mirror showing his full form, and the exact words. He realized his mistake. The attic window had let in moonlight, breaking the ritual's rules. Frustrated but curious, he decided to try again. If it failed, he'd toss the paper and move on. That night, after his parents went to bed, Peter crept through the kitchen to the garage, pulling the attic stairs down with a creak. He tested the bottom rung, an old habit born of childhood fears of falling through. The attic was as he'd left it, the sigil still chalked on the floor. He lit the candles, their amber glow casting eerie shadows, and draped an old quilt over the window to block out all light. Sitting before the mirror, he recited the prayer again, his voice steadier this time. He waited, the silence pressing against him, until a low creak broke it, coming from the attic stairs. The heavy attic door slammed shut, making Peter jump. It couldn't have closed on its own. The stairs had to be folded up to shut it properly. "Dad?" he called, his voice quivering. No answer. "Mom?" Nothing but his own breathing, and a sudden chill that made him shiver. The candle flames flickered wildly, as if caught in a gust, and the mirror's reflection turned black, like a pool of ink. The candles snuffed out, plunging him into darkness. A deep rumble began, low at first, then growing louder, closer, until 2 yellow orbs appeared in the mirror, eyes, glowing and inhuman. The candles flared back to life, and there, in the mirror, crouched a leopard, its tail flicking, its gaze locked on Peter. His throat closed, words impossible. "What have you summoned me for?" A voice echoed in his mind, deep and cavernous, like a shout in a cave. "Boy, I'm not patient." Peter's mind raced. He hadn't expected this to work. "I will respectfully request your guidance," he stammered. "I need wisdom for my schoolwork, for my future." The leopard stepped forward, its paw passing through the mirror like liquid, its form darkening into a shadow with glowing eyes. It rose, reshaping into a half-man, half-leopard chimera, its yellow eyes gleaming, a smile curling its lips. "Is that all?" it said, pacing the attic. "You understand there's a price." Peter nodded, trembling. "What's the price?" The creature bent down, its clawed hand gripping his shoulder. "I help you, and you send me more business. Simple. People who want deals, like you. Fair." Peter hesitated, sensing a catch, but the creature laughed, reading his thoughts. "No catch, boy. Just business." It extended a furry hand. Peter's hand shook as he reached out, and the creature grabbed it, shaking firmly. "Good. Now, let's get you that grade." A claw pricked his forehead, drawing blood. Peter winced, closing his eyes, and when he opened them, the creature, Izzy, was gone. The candles burned, the mirror showed his reflection, and the attic was silent. The next morning, Peter woke buzzing with ideas. He sat at his desk, words flowing effortlessly onto the page. By noon, he'd written a brilliant essay, pages of elegant prose and complex ideas he didn't fully understand himself. He kissed the pages, grinning. This would get him an A, maybe more. But the ideas kept coming, flooding his mind. He wrote more, theories and solutions to problems he'd never studied, then scoured the internet for email addresses of professors, scientists, even government officials. By Sunday night, he'd sent over 500 emails, each brimming with knowledge he couldn't explain. He felt unstoppable, like his future was set. Monday morning, he raced to school, handing his essay to his English teacher, Ms. Carter. Her eyes widened at the stack of pages. Peter had never produced anything like this. He smirked, confident, and shoved his bag into his locker, ignoring his books. He'd read them all over the weekend, their contents etched in his mind. At his locker, he spotted Brian and Samantha. "It worked," he said, grinning. "The spell. I did it again, asked for help with my grade, and my mind's full of stuff. I wrote the best paper ever." They exchanged worried glances, and Samantha touched his forehead, checking for a fever. "I'm not crazy," he snapped, pulling out his notebook to show pages of equations and theories. Brian frowned. "Dude, if this is a joke, it's not funny." They walked away, unconvinced, but Peter didn't care. He was set, no fast food job for him. But in English class, Ms. Carter pulled him into the hallway, where the principal waited. "Peter," she said, holding his essay, "there's no way you wrote this." She compared it to his earlier work, sloppy, barely passing, and the principal agreed. They accused him of cheating, demanding a new essay by the week's end. If he failed, he wouldn't graduate, and the accusation would stain his record. Peter's stomach dropped. All that knowledge, and no one believed it was his. At home, he struggled to write a simpler essay, dumbing down his ideas to sound like the old Peter. It took all night, but he produced something believable, handing it to Ms. Carter the next day with a fake apology. She read it, nodded, and let him sit, no further questions. He thought it was over until he got home and saw 3 black SUVs parked at the curb. Men in suits stood by one, talking to his parents. His father pointed at him, and the men approached, escorting him into a vehicle despite his parents' protests. A cotton sack was pulled over his head, and he felt a cold metal object, likely a gun, pressed into his side. Hours later, the car stopped, and he was led through a metal door, downstairs, and into a room. The sack came off, revealing an interrogation room with a camera and two-way mirror. A man in a black suit sat across from him, a manila folder in hand. "I'm Special Agent Polson, Department of Homeland Security," he said, sliding photocopies of Peter's emails across the table. "Where did you get this information? You're not leaving until you tell me." Peter's mind raced. He couldn't explain the knowledge without sounding insane. Then he remembered Azzy. Closing his eyes, he whispered the prayer again, summoning the demon. The room darkened, the air froze, and Agent Polson sat motionless, like time had stopped. AZ emerged from the mirror, its yellow eyes glowing. "How's it going, my boy?" it said, smirking. Peter stood furious. "This isn't what I wanted. I'm in trouble because of you." AZ shoved him back into the chair. "I gave you what you asked for. Don't blame me for misusing it. And you still owe me." Peter's mind spun, then he smiled. "I called to pay you back. Not one person, but many. There are plenty here who'd make deals with you." AZ rubbed its chin, intrigued. "They have to come to me themselves." Peter grinned wider. "Oh, they will. But if I bring you more than one, I want something else." AZ laughed, liking his boldness. "Name it." Peter whispered his request, and AZ nodded. "Deal." An hour later, Peter stood in an auditorium filled with agents, officials, and military personnel. Behind him, he'd drawn the sigil on a dry erase board, the prayer written below. "This is how I got my knowledge," he said into a microphone. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Agent Polson grabbed his arm, hissing, "Is this a joke? You'll never see daylight again if you don't explain." Peter pulled free, leaning into the mic. "Light the candles, please." Agents around the room lit candles, their flames flickering. "Now, repeat the words on the board." The crowd recited the prayer, voices overlapping, until the room fell silent. The candles flickered, shadows dancing. A loud clank echoed as the doors locked. A burst of air snuffed out the candles, and a rumbling growl filled the darkness. Screams erupted as AZ appeared, its yellow eyes glowing. "Thank you, my boy," it said, smirking. It pointed to the board, which melted into a wooden door. Peter bowed, opened it, and stepped through, the screams fading as it closed behind him. He emerged in the admissions office of New York University. A balding man greeted him, shaking his hand. "Mr. Kennedy, I've heard great things about you, your research, your achievements. Where did you study before?" Peter smiled shyly. "Nowhere special." The man laughed, excited. "Come now, with all these studies sparked by your work, you must have learned somewhere." Peter's smile grew. "If you really want to know, I can show you." He pulled a piece of chalk from his pocket, ready to draw the sigil again. The weeks that followed were a blur of acclaim. Peter's essays and emails had reached the right people, earning him a full scholarship. Professors praised his insights, unaware of their source. But at night, alone in his dorm, Peter heard the rumbling growl, saw those yellow eyes in his dreams. AZ's price wasn't just more business. It was a tether, a connection that never broke. Peter knew he'd opened a door that couldn't be closed, and every time he wrote, every time he succeeded, he felt AZ watching, waiting for the next deal. He kept the slip of paper, now crumpled and worn, as a reminder. The world saw a prodigy, but Peter knew the truth. His brilliance came at a cost, and the demon was always listening.